Suddenly, Scrooge awoke again as the bell was upon the stroke of 1. Scrooge rose from his bed, trembling at the sight of light emanating from the next room. The old hearth was ablaze, the room transformed. Holy mistletoe and ivy hung all about. Sitting on a throne of meats, red-hot chestnuts, fruits, plum puddings, cakes, and seething bowls of punch, was a jolly giant, glorious to see, who bore in his hand a glowing torch shaped like a cornucopia. Come in, and know me a better man. I am the ghost of Christmas present," boomed the joyful spirit, who was dressed in a deep green robe bordered in white fur. "Spirit," the Scrooge said submissively, "I went forth last night and learned a lesson. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it." "Touch my robe," laughed the ghost. The room melted away to reveal the simple home of Bob Cratchit and his humble Christmas Day dinner. In came Bob with Tiny Tim on his shoulder. Alas, for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron brace. With his contented family gathered around the hearth, Bob proposed a toast. "A Merry Christmas to all, my dears," said Bob. "God bless us." "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim. Scrooge quietly asked with an interest he never felt before, "Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner," replied the ghost, "and a crutch without an owner carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." Scrooge and the spirit stood alone in an open space. It had been a long night. Strangely, while Scrooge remained unchanged in his outward form, the ghost appeared older. Looking upon the aging ghost, Scrooge was startled to notice a pair of wretched, starving children who appeared from beneath his great cloak. "Their names are Ignorance and Want," said the spirit. "They belong to man." "Have they no refuge or resource?" cried Scrooge. The ghost mocked Scrooge with his own words. "Are there no prisoners? Are there no workhouses?" The clock struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost, and saw it not.
At the last stroke of midnight, Scrooge beheld a solemn phantom, darkly draped and hooded, coming towards him like a mist along the ground. Bending to his knees, Scrooge asked, "Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" The spirit answered not, but pointed downward with his outstretched hand. "Ghost of the future," he exclaimed, "I fear you no more than any specter I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart." The phantom moved away as it had come, and Scrooge followed in its shadow, which bore him up and carried him along. With that, the city seemed to spring up and encompass them of its own accord, and they stood before the stock exchange, where a cluster of men were carelessly discussing the death of a rich business acquaintance. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life, I don't know of anybody who will go to it," said one fellow with a yawn. "I don't mind going if lunch is provided," observed another with a laugh, a cold, aloof, and unforgiving laugh. They left the busy scene and went to a foul and narrow part of town, to a dingy, filthy pawn shop. The rascally owner, Old Joe, and some shady characters bartered over a collection of personal belongings stolen from some dead man. Scrooge was shuddering from head to foot. "Spirit, I see," he trembled. "The case of this unhappy man might be my own." The ghost spread its dark robe before him like a wing, and withdrawing it revealed poor Bob Cratchit's home once again. This time it was very quiet. The Cratchit family was gathered tenderly by the fireplace, but Tiny Tim was missing, gone, his little crutch lying as a memorial upon the mantel. Scrooge was moved with compassion, pondering the scenes of the night. He asked the ghost, "Tell me, spirit, who was the dead man whose things were bartered, and about whom the men laughed?" In but a misty moment, he found himself in an overgrown, weed-choked churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to a neglected tomb. Trembling, Scrooge crept toward it, and following the figure, read upon the gravestone his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Shaking and clutching at the spirit's robe, Scrooge cried out, "Spirit, hear me! I am not the man I once was. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all year. I will live in the past, present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone." Mysteriously, the form began to shrink. Wide-eyed, Scrooge watched as it collapsed. It became ever smaller, dwindled down, and transformed into
a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. "I will live in the past, the present, and the future," Scrooge repeated as he scrambled out of bed. "The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and Christmas time be praised." Scrooge's heart swelled. He opened his window and, laughing and crying in the same breath, began to shout, "Merry Christmas to one and all." He called downward to a passing boy, promising a shilling-and-a-half crown to deliver a huge Christmas turkey to the Cratchit house. Scrooge dressed himself in his best, then went out upon the street, greeting everyone he met with a good-humored, delighted smile. He happened upon a portly gentleman who had been collecting for charity the day before, and he offered his deepest apology for his previous behavior, and he pledged them a huge donation. Scrooge then found himself at Fred's door and knocking, asked if he could come for dinner. It was a wonderful party, with wonderful games, wonderful anonymity, wonderful happiness. But the next morning, Scrooge arrived early at the office to catch Bob Cratchit 18.5 minutes late in his arrival. Feigning anger, Scrooge began to scold Bob and then suddenly laughed. "A Merry Christmas, Bob, a merrier Christmas, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. Make up the fires, and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good of a friend as a master and a good man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.